the important question we have been covered in this lecture. Okay, which HTML tag defines caption for the field set. Caption we have legend tag. Okay, option B is right here. Sometime what will happen if I correct by mistake, I correct wrong answer, so you have to know that answer is written over there. Okay, so you have to understand from here as well. Which HTML input type it defines hidden data. So basically for defining we have a call tag hidden. Which HTML input type defines search field. So basically for doing this we have a search. Okay, which HTML input type defines telephone number input, that we have actually TEL tag. Okay, which HTML type input type defines URL input, we have a URL tag. Which HTML input type defines email input, that we have email tag. Okay, which HTML input type defines numeric input. So basically for the numeric we have call number. Okay, which HTML input type defines the range slider. So basically we have a called range, we have a input type that called the range. Okay, which HTML input type defines color picker. So basically we have a color. Okay, which HTML input type defines data picker. So for doing this we have a date. Okay, which HTML input type defines time picker. So for doing this we have a call time. Okay, which HTML input type defines week picker. So for doing this we have a call week. Which HTML input type defines month picker. So for doing this we have a month. Okay, which HTML input type defines file upload, we have a file. Okay, which HTML input type defines password field. For doing this we have a password. Okay, which HTML input type defines checkbox, we have a checkbox. Okay, which HTML input type defines radio button. So for doing this we have a call radio. Which HTML input type defines submit button. For doing this we have a call submit. Okay, which HTML input type defines reset button. For doing this we have a call reset. Which HTML attribute disable input field. For doing this we have a call disabled. Which HTML attribute make field mandatory. So we have a call required tag, not compulsory. Okay, required tag. Which HTML attribute provides placeholder text. So for doing this we have a call, so sorry for that, placeholder tag we have. Okay, option C is correct here. Makes you to know the answers are right. Okay, which HTML attribute make field read only. So for doing this we have a read only. Okay, which HTML attribute automatically focuses on element. So basically that auto focuses on the element. Okay, which HTML attribute allows multiple selections for multiple we have, not multi-select. So sorry for that. Multiple is here, correct option D is right here. Which HTML attribute select checkbox by default, so we have a checked. Okay, which HTML attribute select drop down option by default, so we have a selected. Okay, which HTML tag defines drop down list. For doing this we have a select. Okay, which HTML tag defines options inside drop down. So for doing this we have a call drop option. Okay, which HTML tag groups drop down options, we have a OPT option group. Okay, basically which HTML tag defines text area. So we have a text area tag. Okay, which HTML attribute, so make sure to understand the difference between a tag and attribute. So basically inside a tag we can write down attributes, right? Okay, which HTML attribute defines text area rows. So basically we have a rows called rows. Which HTML attribute defines text area column, we have a calls. Okay, which HTML tag defines clickable button. So for doing this we have a call button tag. Okay, which HTML tag defines progress indicator, we have a call progress tag. Okay, which HTML tag defines a scalar measurement, we have meter. Okay, which HTML tag defines auto content. For doing auto content we have audio. Okay, which HTML tag defines video or audio content, actually not auto, so sorry for that, my bad. Audio content, for defining audio content we have audio tag. Video content, video tag. Which HTML attribute start media automatically. So for autoplay means what? When you visit any website randomly, so if there is any video or link there, so that will play automatically. You don't have to play like click on the play and then it will play. Basically you don't have to create your media autoplay, because it feels irritating sometimes. You don't know what's going to play, right? So that's why. Which HTML attribute repeats. For repeating we have a loop. Loop means they're continuously repeating. Okay, which HTML attribute displays media controls. For doing this we have a controls tag. Which HTML tag defines media source. For doing this we have a source tag. Okay, Which HTML tag defines subtitle for the media? We have a track. Okay. Which HTML tag defines a scalable vector graphics? For doing this, we have a SVG. Which HTML tag defines graphics via scripting? We have a canvas. Okay. Which HTML tag embeds another web page? So iframe we have. Okay. Which HTML tag embeds external resources? We have a we have embed or object pods. Okay. Which HTML tag defines image map? So image map no map only map. Okay. Which HTML tag defines clickable clickable reason. So basically we have an area. Which HTML attribute defines tooltip text? So for doing this we have a title. Okay. Which HTML attribute specifies inline CSS styles? So for doing this we have a style. Which HTML attribute specifies CSS class name? Class. Okay. Which HTML attribute specifies unique identifier ID? Which HTML tag links external CSS? Link. Which HTML tag defines an internal CSS? Style. Okay. Which HTML tag adds JavaScript? So script tag. Okay. Which HTML tag defines feedback content when JavaScript disabled? No script. Which HTML tag defines metadata? Meta tag. Which HTML attribute defines character encoding? Char set. Okay. Char set. Okay. Next question we have 60 question number 60 we have. Which HTML tag defines base URL for all links? Base tag. Which HTML attribute specifies base URL? href. Okay. Which HTML tag defines relationship between current and external documents? So basically we have a link tag called. Okay. Understood. So question number 63 we are about to move question number 63. 63 question number we have question number 63 we are about to move. Okay, and 63 question says that which HTML attribute specifies relationship in link tag? So basically we have a rel. Okay, and after we have 64 questions which HTML attribute specify linked document URL. So basically this is what href hyperreference. Okay, which HTML tag defines the table heading section? So basically we have a tag called th. Okay, which HTML tag defines table body section? We have a called tbody. Which HTML tag defines table footer section? tfoot. Okay, which HTML tag defines table caption tag? Which HTML attribute merge table column? Call span. Which HTML attribute merge table row span? Which HTML tag defines form tag we have? Which HTML attribute specifies form submission URL? We have action tag. Okay, which HTML attribute specifies form submission method? For doing this we have a call method tag. Okay, which HTTP method sends form data visibly in URL? Basically we have a get tag, which is HTTP method sends form data securely. Which HTML tag defines label for form control? Caption. Which HTML tag groups related form controls? Field set. Which HTML tag defines title for title? Basically we have a legend tag. Okay, which HTML input type hides entered character? So basically we have a password tag. Okay, which HTML input type allows searching? So for searching we have a search tag. Okay, which HTML input type allows choosing files? For choosing file we have a file. Okay, which HTML input type allows selecting date we have a date. Okay, which HTML input type allows selecting times. So for selecting times we have a time. Okay, next question we have which HTML input type allows selecting month. We have a month tag. Which HTML input type allows selecting week. We have a call week tag. Which HTML input type allows selecting color. We have color tag. Okay, which HTML input type allows numeric range selection. So for doing this we have a range tag. Okay, which HTML input type validates in email format. Email tag. Okay, which HTML input type validates URL format. Basically we have a URL tag. Okay, 90% of we have which HTML input type validates phone number. So for doing this we have a call TEL, which HTML input type defines hidden value. So basically for defining hidden value we have a tag called hidden. Okay, we have already been discussed about this what did it called tag. Okay, that is hidden tag. Like why do we use hidden tag and all the stuff we have been already discussed in the previous video. So basically if you haven't yet watched the lecture, so I would prefer to watch from the part 1 because it might be very helpful for you all. Okay, which HTML attribute make field compulsory. So for compulsory we have a required tag. Which HTML attribute disable user input. We have a disable tag. Okay, which HTML attribute prevents editing but allows submission. So basically we have read only tag. Okay, which HTML attribute displays shorthand text. Which HTML attribute automatically focuses element on load. Which HTML attribute pre-selects checkbox. Which HTML attribute pre-select option in drop down. Which HTML attribute allows selecting multiple options. So we have multiple. Okay, so last question we have which HTML attribute disable autocomplete. So now you will tell me in the comment section the answer of this question. Okay, and we have again done with 100%. So thank you so much for watching the video till the end. Okay, and do like, subscribe.